Be me, 25 Sysadmin. Min. I don't work in some fancy tech office downtown. My company rents a few floors in a generic office building, the kind with beige walls and carpets that have seen better days. My job is to make sure the network doesn't die and that Karen from accounting can open her PDFs. It's not glorious, but it pays the bills. Downstairs in the lobby, there's a small coffee shop. It's the only place to get decent coffee without walking 3 blocks. So, it became part of my daily routine. Go in, get coffee, go up to my server room, stare at blinking lights for 8 hours. That's where I met Connie. She worked the counter. Around my age, always had some brightly colored hair, a new piercing every other month. She was smart, I'll give her that. Quick with numbers, remembered everyone's order. We got to talking, just the usual small talk at first. How's your day? Weather sucks. Can't wait for Friday. After a few months, we were what you might call work friends. I'd take my 15-minute break at her counter instead of in the depressing break room upstairs. And that's when I learned about her whole world view. Every single day, it was something new. Just saw a guy get promoted in marketing. Of course he did. Male privilege is a hell of a drug. My friend is complaining about dating apps. I told her, what do you expect? It's a system designed by men, for men. Men just don't understand emotional labor. They think not being a jerk is the same as being a good partner. At first, I tried to debate her. I'd bring up a counterpoint, try to offer a different perspective. It was pointless. It was like trying to explain color to a person born blind. She had her textbook answers for everything. Anything I said was just anecdotal evidence or my own internalized misogyny. After a while, I just gave up. It wasn't worth the energy. My life was already tiring enough. I didn't need to add a daily, unwinnable argument to the mix. So I became a professional nodder. Yeah? Uh-huh. That's crazy. It was easier. I'd get my coffee, nod through a 2-minute lecture on the patriarchy, and escape back to my servers. My servers never lectured me. They just blinked. It was nice. One afternoon, I was on my break, sitting at one of the small tables. It was a slow day. Just me and a couple at the other end of the shop. Connie brought my coffee over. She leaned against the table. "See that?" she said, nodding towards the couple. The guy was trying way too hard, laughing too loud, telling some story with big hand gestures. The girl looked vaguely interested, or maybe just polite. He was a good-looking dude, tall, fit, nice clothes. That's the male experience in a nutshell, Connie said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He just has to show up, be confident, tell a few dumb jokes, and buy her a $7 latte. The bar is literally on the floor. I looked at the guy. I didn't see confidence. I saw anxiety. I saw a guy desperately trying to be interesting enough for a second date. I saw the same look I'd had on my face a dozen times before it all became too exhausting. I didn't say any of that, though. I just stirred my coffee. "Yeah, crazy," I said. She sighed, as if my lack of outrage was a personal disappointment. You just don't get it because you're in it. You can't see the water you're swimming in. She went back to the counter, leaving me to not get it in peace. The thing is, she was right. I couldn't see the water she was talking about, probably because the desert I was living in didn't have any. She talked about her friends a lot, a group of them from her sociology classes. It sounded like an echo chamber of the highest order. They had a group chat where they'd share screenshots of conversations with guys, dissecting them for toxic masculinity and red flags. A guy using a smiley face emoji? He's patronizing you. A guy taking more than an hour to respond? He's playing power games. A guy responding immediately? He's love bombing and has no life. There was no way for a man to win in their court. They were the judge, jury, and executioner, and the verdict was always guilty. She'd tell me these stories like she was a war correspondent reporting from the front lines of the gender war. You wouldn't believe what this guy said to Chloe last night. I always believed it, because I knew the full story was probably much more boring, but it had been twisted and filtered through 3 layers of ideological outrage before it got to me. To her, the dating world was a battlefield where women were valiant soldiers fighting for respect, and men were either bumbling idiots or malicious warlords. There was no in-between. And men like me, the quiet ones who just wanted to be left alone, we were collaborators, part of the problem for our silence. Then, sometime last spring, her energy shifted. She came into work one day practically buzzing. "I matched with someone," she said, leaning over the counter, like she was telling me a state secret. "And he seems different." She showed me his profile. Of course, the guy was a carbon copy of every male model on Instagram, at least 6'3", jawline you could sharpen an axe on, perfect teeth. His photos were a checklist of what dating coaches tell you to post. One on a mountain summit, looking thoughtfully into the distance. One on a boat, laughing with a beer in his hand. One wearing a perfectly fitted suit at some charity gala. And the grand finale, one with a golden retriever puppy, the nuclear option. My first thought was, this is everything you supposedly hate. He was the walking embodiment of the privilege she was always talking about. A guy who probably never had to wonder if his height was a deal breaker. A guy who never had to craft the perfect opening message, only to be left on red. Her entire ideology should have rejected him on sight, but it didn't. "He's a consultant," she said, her eyes shining, "and he volunteers at an animal shelter. He's smart and kind." I looked at the photos again. He was holding a puppy, not performing the open-heart surgery. "Looks cool," I said. It was the safest response. "We're going out on Friday," she said. "I'm actually nervous. It's been a while since I've been excited about a date." For the next few days, that's all she talked about. She analyzed his messages with the intensity of a codebreaker. "He used a full stop here. Do you think that's aggressive or just grammatically correct? He asked what I'm passionate about. That's a green flag, right? He cares about my mind." She planned her outfit, her conversation topics, even her "I had a great time" text for after the date. For a few days, she almost sounded normal. Just a person, excited and nervous about meeting someone new, but the ideology was never far away. "It's just so nice to see a man put in the bare minimum of effort," she'd say. "Honestly, if more men just did what he's doing, the world would be a better place. It's not that hard." I wanted to ask her, what exactly is he doing? He was texting, he was being handsome. That was it. But I didn't. I just nodded. Yeah, totally. The day after the date, she was walking on air. She gave me her coffee for free, which had never happened before. "It was perfect," she said, leaning on the counter, a dreamy look on her face. She gave me the full rundown. He picked a great restaurant. He was even better looking in person. He stood up when she got to the table. He asked questions about her studies, and he actually listened. He talked about his job, but not in a braggy way. He insisted on paying. He didn't even let me look at the bill. He just handled it. It was so masculine, but in a good, non-toxic way. At the end of the night, he walked her to her car. He didn't try to kiss her, which she saw as a sign of ultimate respect. He just said he had an amazing time and that he'd be in touch soon. She was completely smitten. "See?" she said, her eyes wide with revelation. "That's how easy it is for men. Just be a decent human being for 3 hours. Show some respect. Be a good conversationalist. That's it. That's all they have to do." She said it like she had just discovered a fundamental truth of the universe. She looked at me, expecting me to share in this epiphany. I just smiled, a tired, empty smile. "I'm happy for you, Connie." And I was, in a way. It was nice to see someone happy. But the whole time she was talking, I just had this sinking feeling in my stomach. This story felt familiar. I'd heard it before. I'd lived it before, from the other side. And I knew how it was likely to end. The next day, a Saturday, I had to go into the office for some emergency server maintenance. I stopped by the coffee shop on my way in. Connie was working. The glow was still there, but it was a little dimmer. She was still smiling, but she was also checking her phone every 30 seconds. "He hasn't texted yet," she said, trying to sound casual. "But he's probably just busy. He's a consultant, important stuff." "Yeah, probably," I said, paying for my coffee. She stared at her phone, at the blank screen where a message from him was supposed to be. "He said he'd be in touch soon." Soon is subjective, right? Totally subjective, I agreed. I went upstairs and got lost in my work. When I came back down a few hours later, the vibe had shifted completely. The shop was empty, except for her. She was wiping down the counter with frantic, angry movements. Her phone was nowhere in sight. She barely looked at me as I walked past. The air was thick with a new kind of silence, the loud, buzzing silence of a hope that was starting to curdle. I didn't see her Sunday or Monday. My breaks didn't line up with her shifts. By Tuesday morning, I had almost forgotten about it. I walked into the coffee shop, ready for my usual routine, and there she was. She looked awful. Her usually bright, colorful makeup was gone. Her hair was just thrown up in a messy bun. But it was her eyes that got me. They were puffy, red-rimmed. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. She saw me and her face just crumpled. She didn't even try to hide it. The mask was gone. "He never texted," she whispered, her voice cracking. Nothing. Not a word. She leaned against the counter, wrapping her arms around herself. "I don't understand. It was a perfect date. I thought we connected." I just stood there, holding my empty, reusable cup. I had no idea what to say. "I even sent him a message yesterday morning," she continued, her voice thick with shame. "Just something light. Hey, hope you have a great week." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. He read it. The app said he read it, and he just ignored it. The word ignored hung in the air between us. It was a word she had probably used 1,000 times before, but always as an accuser, never as a victim. And now, here she was, experiencing for the first time what it felt like to be a ghost, to be a notification swiped away and forgotten. She was waiting for me to say something, to say, "He's a jerk. You're too good for him. All men are trash." The usual script, the things her friends were probably telling her in the group chat, but I couldn't say them, not this time, because I knew what she was feeling. I knew that specific hollow ache in your chest, the humiliation of a one-sided connection, the feeling of being completely and utterly invisible. She was looking at me, her feminist armor completely shattered, revealing the vulnerable person underneath. She was looking for an ally, but all I could feel was a profound, weary sadness. Because the dam of my own silence, a dam I had been building for years, was starting to crack, and I knew a flood was coming. Her face was a mess of confusion and hurt. She was looking for a lifeline. She wanted me to throw her the same old rope she'd thrown at 100 other guys. "It's just so unfair," she said again, her voice smaller this time. "Men have all the power in dating. They can just decide you're not worth their time and disappear. It's toxic." That was the word, the final straw. Toxic. She had used her favorite weapon, her silver bullet for ending any argument. But this wasn't an argument. This was her, asking for comfort after getting a tiny taste of the poison I'd been drinking my whole life. And my dam didn't just crack, it exploded. I remember taking a slow breath. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't get angry. That would have been easier for her. She knew how to handle male anger. It fit her narrative. What she didn't know how to handle was male exhaustion. "Unfair?" I started, and my voice was flat. devoid of any emotion. It was the voice I used when I was reading server logs, just data. You got ignored by one guy, a handsome, successful guy that thousands of women would want to date, and your entire world falls apart. You want to talk about unfair? I took a step closer, leaning slightly on the counter. Connie, for you, a dating app is a catalog. You swipe through hundreds of faces, looking for flaws, reasons to say no, a bad haircut, a fish picture, a typo in the bio. You're the customer, browsing the shelves. For me, a dating app is a resume I'm screaming into a black hole. It's a job application where 99% of employers don't even send a rejection letter. They just throw it in the trash without looking at it. Her mouth opened to say something, probably some rehearsed line about standards, but I kept going. You get dozens of likes a day. You have to sort through them. What a terrible problem to have. I get maybe one like a week, usually from a bot. You know what the silence of an empty inbox feels like? Day after day? You're sad because one guy ghosted you. I've sent out, hundreds of first messages, carefully crafted messages, trying to be funny or interesting, not just hey. I've spent hours trying to be the person you see on TV, the witty, charming guy. The vast majority of those messages, they're just left unread. Not even a no thanks, just nothing. I cease to exist. You're upset because a guy made you feel invisible for 3 days. I've felt invisible my entire adult life. She was staring at me now, her eyes wide. This was not in the script. And let's talk about the date itself, I said, my voice still dangerously calm. For you, the date was a test. You sat there and he had to perform. He had to be charming, funny, respectful. He had to pay. He had to carry the conversation. He had to be perfect. You were the judge. When I manage to get a date, which is rare, I'm the one on stage. It's an audition. I have to prove I'm worthy of her time. I have to be more interesting than the 50 other guys in her DMs. I have to find the perfect balance of confident but not arrogant, funny but not a clown, interested but not a creep. It's a tightrope walk over a canyon of red flags. One wrong step, one bad joke, one moment of awkward silence, and you're done. The interview is over. We'll be in touch, which means never. You said he was masculine in a non-toxic way because he just handled the bill. Do you have any idea how much pressure that is? To always be the one who has to handle it? To know that if you suggest splitting the bill, you'll be seen as cheap and undateable? It's not about power, Connie. It's a test. Another box you have to check. She looked down at the counter, unable to meet my eyes. I took another breath. I was almost done. And the worst part? The part you and your friends will never understand, is the loneliness. You're hurt right now, so you can go to your friends, and they'll rally around you. They'll tell you he's trash, and you're a queen. You'll get 100 comments on your Instagram post about self-care. You have a support system. If I go to my male friends and say, I'm lonely, I'm tired of being rejected, you know what they'll say? Hit the gym. Focus on your career. Stop being a downer. They don't know how to handle it, so they offer solutions, not empathy. And if I ever made the mistake of telling a woman on a date that I was lonely, that's the end of the conversation. That's a giant flashing red flag that says needy, desperate, low value. Women want a rock, not a man with cracks in his foundation. So we don't talk about it. We just carry it, alone. This quiet, heavy weight that nobody wants to see or acknowledge. You talk about toxic masculinity like it's some club men created to keep women down. You have no idea. It's the cage we're all locked in. And the first rule of the cage is, you don't talk about the cage. I finally stopped. My chest was tight. My throat was dry. I had said more in those 2 minutes than I had in the past 2 years. The silence in the coffee shop was deafening. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Connie was completely still. She was looking at her hands on the counter. A single tear rolled down her cheek and dripped onto the polished surface. "So, forgive me," I said, my voice finally just a tired whisper. "Forgive me for not having any sympathy for you right now. You wanted to know what the male experience was like. This is it. It's this, the silence, the invisibility, and the soul-crushing knowledge that nobody cares." I turned around and walked out. I didn't get my coffee. I didn't look back. I went upstairs to my server room, sat down in my chair and stared at the blinking lights. And for the first time, their silence felt loud. The next few days were incredibly awkward. I started getting my coffee from the place 3 blocks away. It was worse coffee, and it was more expensive, but it was better than facing her. I didn't know what I expected. An apology? An argument? For her to report me to HR for creating a hostile work environment? I just got silence. I saw her in the lobby a couple of times. We made eye contact for a split second, and then we both looked away, like strangers who'd brushed shoulders in a crowd. The whole situation felt heavy. I had finally said the truth, my truth, and it didn't feel liberating. It just felt empty. I started to think maybe I'd made a mistake. I'd kicked her when she was down. She was genuinely hurting, and I'd used her pain as a launch pad for my own monologue. Maybe I was the jerk. Maybe I should have just nodded and said, "That's crazy." It had been working for me for years. It kept the peace. I found myself missing our stupid, one-sided conversations. At least it was a routine. At least it was something. Now there was just nothing. Another empty space in a life that already had too many. About a week passed. I had resigned myself to the new normal. My routine now included the 3-block walk and the bad coffee. That morning, I was sitting at my desk, rebooting a server remotely. There was a soft knock on my office door, which was weird. Nobody ever came to my office. I opened the door, and it was her, Connie. She was holding 2 paper cups from the coffee shop downstairs. She looked nervous. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Hi," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Hey," I managed to say back. She held out one of the cups to me. I brought you this, the way you like it." I remembered. I took it. My fingers brushed against hers. "Thanks," I said. An awkward silence stretched between us. She wouldn't look at me. She was just staring at the floor, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I thought she was going to leave, but she stayed. Finally, she took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said," she started, still looking down. "A lot." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She looked up, and for the first time she made direct eye contact. Her eyes weren't angry or defensive. They just looked tired as I felt. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded genuine, not a forced, politically correct apology, but a real one. I just nodded. I didn't know what else to do. We stood there for another few seconds in silence. I took a sip of the coffee. It was perfect. She gave me a small, sad smile. Then she asked a question no one had ever really asked me before, not in a real way. "Eugene?" she said, using my name. How was your day?" It caught me completely off guard. It wasn't small talk. It wasn't a greeting. It was a real question. I looked at her, at this person who had been a symbol of everything that frustrated me about the world, and in that moment, she was just a person who was trying. I thought about my day, the crashed server, the annoying help desk tickets, the long, quiet hours staring at screens, and for the first time, I felt like I could actually tell someone. I don't know if anything really changed that day. I don't know if she truly understood, or if she just felt bad for a little while and would eventually go back to her old ways. People don't change overnight. Worldviews built over years don't get demolished by one conversation. Maybe she was just being polite. Maybe she was trying to smooth things over so our work interactions wouldn't be so awkward. I honestly don't know if I got through to her. But as she stood there, waiting for an answer, with a coffee in her hand that was a peace offering, I felt a flicker of something.